Hello, everybody. Hope you guys are having a good evening or morning wherever you are. I want to talk to you guys about some of the interesting things that I have learned reading Julius Caesar's account of his conquest of Gaul. And if you have ever seen the film Gladiator, then you have heard the term Gaul. There is a scene in the movie Gladiator in which Maximus, this gladiator who was a general, but now he is a slave and he is being forced to fight for his own life in the Colosseum. And he is forced to have to fight this retired champion. I mean, this champion who has returned from retirement to fight in the arena. And the champion is addressed as this mighty warrior from Gaul. And the Gauls, they were truly efficient warriors. They were known for their martial spirit, their military prowess. They were known to be very good at fighting. In fact, in a number of times in this book, Julius Caesar will say that the Gauls were just as good as fighting. They were just as good in fighting as the Roman soldiers were. These were very good fighters. They were very high in dexterity. A lot of points in dexterity. So there's an interesting characteristic of the Gauls that I find fascinating, and that is their love for rebellion. Now, who were the Gauls? The Gauls were basically the ancient ancestors of the French. They were Celts, and they were the same people as the Celts in Britain. And people in England, Ireland, Wales, they all have Celtic blood in them. More so the Irish and the Welsh than the English, because the English were the English were at one point in time the Anglo-Saxons. England was invaded by the Anglo-Saxons, but the native population in England I said NATO Saxons. Oh God, that's actually more of a fitting term than we would like to think. The NATO Saxons. I'm going to use that from now on. That literally just popped up in my head. But the Anglo-Saxons, they invaded Britain. The native population were Celts. They were British Celts. And a lot of them were massacred by the Anglo-Saxons, but there was also intermixture that took place, intermarriage that took place. But also a lot of these Celtic Britons, they would flee to Wales. So the Welsh today are the descendants of these ancient Celts. The Irish are definitely Celts. That's why we love to refer to Irish music as Celtic music, or Celtic music, however you pronounce it. The ancient inhabitants of France were Celts. Now, these people would later on get mixed in and then conquered by Germanic peoples like the Franks. And the Normans were a Frankish Germanic people. And those Normans would eventually invade England, and that's why there's a lot of French influence in the English language. So the English are very mixed up. Celtic, Anglo-Saxon, Germanic, Norman, which is also Germanic. A lot of Germanic-Celtic intermixture. But Austria was originally inhabited by by Celts, only to later on be conquered and mixed in by Germanic people. Gaul consisted of France, parts of what is today known as Belgium, and parts of Germany. And that's why when you read Julius Caesar's account, there's a lot of mentioning of the Rhine River and tribes that were living on the banks of the Rhine River. And you have these Celtic tribes that were constantly in conflict with the Germanic people. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting in European history. There is this constant conflict taking place between Celtic people and Germanic people. You read about this taking place constantly in European history, ancient European history, and modern European history, for that matter. I mean, in ancient times, you can read about the Celtic Britons being invaded by the Anglo-Saxons. And we have all heard of King Arthur. Who was King Arthur fighting? We've all heard of the Round Table, and we saw that movie. I think, wasn't Kevin Costner in a film about King Arthur? Correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain there was a film with Kevin Costner, and it was about King Arthur many years ago. I don't remember. Long ass time ago. It's been a while since I've gotten a film from the local Blockbuster, okay? But King Arthur was a Celtic Briton. They say that he is a mythological folk hero. And of course, there was mythologizing of heroes in old times. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean that King Arthur wasn't a real historical person. I think he was a real historical person. I find it hard to believe that people would write so many texts and books about a person that never existed. I don't think people are that dumb. And King Arthur was fighting the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons, they had their heroes. I mean, they were worshiping Odin. And if you read St. Bede's account of the Anglo-Saxon conquest of Britain, he will tell you that there were 2 Anglo-Saxon military commanders, and they were direct descendants of Odin. So the Anglo-Saxons, they had their heroes that they mythologized and even worshipped, like Odin. And the Celtic Britons, they had their hero, King Arthur. And he was a hero because he fought against the Anglo-Saxons. And there was a lot of battles that were fought, a lot of battles. But eventually the Anglo-Saxons would win. When you read Julius Caesar's account, there's this constant conflict between the Celts and the Germans. And there are times wherein you have Celts who are going to Julius Caesar and they're saying the Germanians are attacking us, the Germans are attacking us, and they're being attacked by the Germans. And you even have German tribes fighting each other. Very interesting. There's a tribe of German, actually, that is attacked by another German tribe called the Suebi. And actually, there were 2 tribes that were attacked by the Suebi. The Suebi were the most warlike of the Germanic tribes. Suebi were, I mean, if there was a Third Reich in ancient times, you would probably name the Suebi, right? The Suebi, they were very powerful. They were very warlike. They fought against other tribes. They didn't get along with anybody. They were vicious. They were like the Hitlers of antiquity. And there was another tribe. There were 2 other tribes that were in conflict with the Suebi. They were called the Usipetes and the Tensteri. And the Usipetes and the Tensteri, they were driven out by the Suebi, and they had nowhere really to go. So for, I think, like 3 years, they roamed around Gaul kind of aimlessly looking for somewhere to settle. And then eventually they found a tribe that has a very interesting name. So they found this other tribe called the Menapi. And the Menapi, they had all these farms and they had barns and animals, and they were living a very agrarian lifestyle. And the Usipetis and the Tensteri, they came along and they said, oh, yeah, we're peaceful. We're not going to hurt you, blah, blah, blah. They acted like they were friendly towards the Menapi. That word, Menapi, it doesn't sound European. It sounds Native American, like Menapi. Which tribe are you from? I am from the Menapi. And so the Usipetis and the Tensteri, they were Germanic peoples who were driven out by other Germanic peoples. They were driven out by the Suebi. Then they go to this other tribe, the Menapi, and they act like they're friendly, only to ambush the Menapi, slaughter the Menapi, burn down the property of the Menapi, and then take over their stuff, take over their territory. Well, Julius Caesar got involved, and he basically told these two tribes, the Usipetis and the Tensteri, that he didn't really want them to be in Gaul. He didn't feel comfortable with a Germanic tribe being in Gaul, occupying the territory of another tribe, because Julius Caesar knew that those people would eventually go to war with Rome. And that's how things were. Things are still this way, and nothing's changed. Like I said, you have this constant conflict between Gauls, Celts, and Germanic peoples, right? Be it Celtic Britons fighting with Anglo-Saxons, be it Celtic tribes dealing with the Suebi, dealing with other tribes, be it other tribes dealing with the Suebi, this Germanic tribe. You just read about this constant warfare that's happening. You can read about the fact that Austria was originally inhabited by Celts. They were taken over by Germanic peoples. You can read about the Vikings. I mean, who were the Vikings, right? Obviously, they were Scandinavians. They were Germanic peoples, and they would invade Celtic lands. They would go all the way to Ireland. And then you read about World War I, and you read about Germany going to war with Great Britain, invading France. The same thing happened in the Second World War. You have Germanic peoples, the Third Reich, trying to invade its neighbors. It's like nothing's ever changed, right? It's like nothing has ever changed. It's this aspect of history is so fascinating to me because it shows us that not much really changes. And in this particular story with Julius Caesar, it's very interesting because these two tribes who took over this land in Gaul, this land that was owned by the Menapi, these two tribes would act very friendly towards Julius Caesar. And they would say, we want peace. We don't want to go to war with you, Julius Caesar. And these two tribes were the Usipetis and the Tensteri. And Julius Caesar was a very reasonable person. You read about antiquity and you read about how warlike people were, how conquering people were, how expansionist people were. And not everybody was equally bad, right? Nobody was equally bad, right? There were some peoples that were more warlike than others. I mean, Genghis Khan was way more warlike than Julius Caesar. And Genghis Khan was way more murderous than Julius Caesar. The Huns were extremely murderous. The Germanic peoples, the barbarian horde, they were very, very expansionist. Very expansionist. Julius Caesar was expansionist, but he was also very diplomatic. And when tribes would come to him and say, listen, we don't want to fight, we just want friendship with you guys, Julius Caesar would honor that. But if you tried to hoodwink Julius Caesar, if you tried to take advantage of his kindness, you were screwed. He was ruthless. And I've talked about this before. There were cases of Gaulish tribes who would establish friendship with Julius Caesar, and then they would take advantage of his kindness, and Julius Caesar would crush them. He would sell their people as slavery. I mean, listen, if you wanted friendship with Julius Caesar, he honored that. But once you took advantage of his kindness, I mean, he didn't mind selling your entire civilian population into slavery. That's how it worked. And so these two German tribes, the Usipetes and the Tensteri, they acted very friendly with Julius Caesar, but he knew that they were full of crap. But he went along with it because that's how he worked. And eventually, these two Germanic tribes, Usipetes and the Tensteri, they ambushed a unit of Roman troops. And the way they would fight is they would fight on horseback. They would ride on their horses, and then they would jump off of their horses and they would fight on their feet. And so they ambushed these Roman soldiers, and they would run up to the Roman soldiers as they were on horseback, and they would stab the horses, thereby dismounting the Roman soldiers, and they would fight them on foot. And they slaughtered over 70 Roman soldiers. Julius Caesar was pissed. Rightfully so. I mean, he was being friendly with them, and he was willing to work with them. He was willing to compromise with them because, remember, they attacked a tribe. They attacked the Menapii tribe in Gaul. They took over their land. And Julius Caesar said, listen, I really don't want you guys in Gaul. I don't trust you guys. But here's what I'm going to do. There's a Germanic tribe called the Ubi. And I'm friendly with the Ubi. And you can live on their land. They're a Germanic tribe. They're Germans just like you. You can live on some of their land. And we can come to a compromise. So he was willing to work with them. It's not like he was completely unreasonable. But they were unreasonable. And after they ambushed and slaughtered dozens of Roman soldiers, they thought, well, Julius Caesar is such a nice guy. We'll just send out some of our politicians to him and apologize. So a whole group of politicians from these two German tribes, the Usipetes and the Tensteri, they came to Julius Caesar. They were like, oh, hey, Julius, we're really, really sorry. Yeah, we didn't really mean for that to happen, blah, blah, blah. And Julius Caesar was like, oh, good, you're here. Well, guess what's going to happen? You hoodwinked me. You took advantage of my kindness. This is what's going to happen. All of you guys are going to be my prisoners. So he detained all these politicians. Then he made an attack on these two German tribes. And the attack was so ferocious that Roman soldiers were literally killing women and children. I mean, there was no rules at this point. It's like, you guys broke the rules. You ambushed us. We're going to slaughter your people. And the people of these German tribes, they ran. And they ran into a body of water. I think it was a river. And they drowned. I mean, that's how ferocious the attack was. And that was it. And they would eventually surrender. And that was it. They were destroyed. Not they weren't annihilated, but they were definitely vanquished. They were crushed into submission. But you always read in ancient Europe, you always read about Germanic tribes invading their neighbors. It's this constant pattern in European history. Be it Anglo-Saxons invading Celtic Britain, be it Germanic tribes invading people in Gaul, going to war with people in Gaul, which is ancient France, be it Vikings invading their neighbors, be it Germany invading Belgium and France in World War I, and then going to war with Russia, going to war with Great Britain, be it the Third Reich trying to take over all of Europe. There is this constant pattern in European history of Germanic people wanting to dominate their neighbors. And because that is such a constant pattern in history, who's to say that it won't happen again? Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.